Hey, welcome back to my channel. In this video, we're going to be talking about the Miami Dolphins and their upcoming game with the Atlanta Falcons, which is going to be tonight. The Dolphins will be playing the Falcons in their first preseason game tonight at 7 o'clock. And I'm going to give you guys the players that I'm going to be watching, that I'm going to be monitoring their progression throughout the preseason, and who I think really need to who really are in a spot where they need to show substantial improvement or something to make that could like put the coaches on notice in terms of which players to keep. Because in the preseason you have tryouts. These are basically a tryout for I would say about 66% of backups in the NFL, because that's really what the preseason is about. Preseason, it's not really needed for the starters. You know who the starters are going to be, what the preseason is for is to find out, okay, if my starters were to go down, which one of my backups can step in and perform adequately until my players comes back. The whole next man up mentality that they say in professional sports, more so in football than in any other team sport, because of how massive the rosters are, right? So here it is. I have the Dolphins team depth chart, and on offense, you have your starters right here in the first category, but at the wide receiver position, the guy I think needs to have a big preseason, I would say, is Eric Nzukama. He was a fourth round pick for the Dolphins last year out of Texas Tech, and he looked really, really, really good last preseason. That was mainly with Skylar Thompson as his the guy throwing him the ball, because Skylar Thompson and he had a big preseason last year. So I would like to see how Eric Ezukanma has made his progression in from year one to year two. That's for the receivers. For tight ends, and tight end, I think is probably the biggest question mark on that Dolphins team, because they don't really have a. I don't think they have that hybrid tight end that can block and pass receive, that to take some of the pressure off of Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. So at the tight end position, I'm really intrigued by Elijah Higgins, and if I'm correct, the Dolphins drafted him out of Stanford in the seventh round, and he's a big guy, kind of big tight end that can line up as a slot receiver, flex inside, and play with his hand in it during the 3 point stance like a traditional tight end. Not really known for his blocking though, so kind of be interesting to see how he'll perform in this preseason. So Izukama and Higgins are the guys that I look for in out of the pass catchers, to see who's going to have that big preseason. For the offensive line, Dan Feeney, he's going to be the backup lineman that I'm looking out for. He was drafted by the Chargers. Yeah, it was the Chargers. He was drafted by the Chargers in the third round of 2017. He was out of Indiana. Played both guard and center, and I think it's important for Miami to have their backup center in place, because Connor Williams is in a contract year, and if Dan Feeney can show that, hey, he could be that guy that they can look for if the Dolphins were not to sign Connor Williams, could be a viable option for them, outside of Connor. And for here's your defense. You have your defensive starters in the first category. One defensive player I'm looking for to have a big year in the preseason is Channing Tindall. He was the Dolphins' first draft pick of the 2022 draft class last year out of Georgia. He was a part of one of the best defenses in college football history. That 2021 Georgia Bulldogs defense was probably the best defense we have seen this century. I mean, they had so many players, not just in the 2021 draft, but excuse me, the 2022 draft. He in the 2022 draft, but also players in the 2023 draft earlier this April. N'Kobe Dean, um, Trayvon Walker, Jalen Carter. I'm trying to remember all their names. Devontae Wyatt, Jordan Davis, Louis Seen, Keely Ringo, Nolan Smith. All those guys came from that 2021 Georgia Bulldogs defense, and they all have gone into the NFL over the last couple of draft classes, 23, 22, and 23, and I would say about like seven of them have gone in the first round. Channing Tindall went the third round, but it was just I was excited when the Dolphins drafted him. He didn't really get on the field too much, but maybe now in a different defense, playing for Vic Fangio rather than Josh Boyer or Brian, which is basically a system that was created by Brian Flores. Maybe in Vic Fangio's defense, Vic Fangio knows how to has maybe put him in places where that could better utilize his ability because Channing Tindall is a athletic freak, 6'1", 230, runs like a wide receiver, but he plays defense. So, and he played under Kirby Smart, who's one of the best defensive coaches I've ever seen in college football. So, maybe this would be a nice year for maybe a nice preseason for Channing Tindall, and I'm going to be keeping my eye on him. You go to the secondary. Secondary has a little bit more intriguing players, I would say. One thing I would like to say is probably the only guy that you could maybe look at as a starter that you want to pay attention to in the preseason. Not that he's going to play too much, but Brandon Jones. And the reason I say Brandon Jones is this: he fit perfectly in the kind of system that Dolphins were playing under Brian Flores and Josh Boyer, who was their defensive coordinator last year. But Brandon Jones, he's not really a coverage guy. He is a run support safety. If he was uh, a few inches taller and a few pounds heavier in terms of muscle mass, he'd probably be playing linebacker. Um, and in the system that the Dolphins were running defensively, he moves around, but he's mainly in the box safety, run support, blitzing on passing downs. It'll be interesting to see how his role is utilized under Vic Fangio, who's the new defense coordinator for Miami. And you go to the cornerback position. Last year, the Dolphins had a lot of injuries last year at the cornerback position with Xavier Howard and Byron Jones, who never got on the field, and Nick Needham, who also went down. But a guy who stepped up for them last year was Kader Kohu, who was their second year player at Texas A&M Commerce. He had a very excellent rookie season last year for an undrafted guy. The Dolphins right now had the injury with Jalen Ramsey, so that enlisted them to sign Eli Apple, who was a free agent after spending a couple of years with the Cincinnati Bengals. Been a little bit of a journeyman. Uh, but the guys at the cornerback spot that I'm looking for to see who's going to have those breakout performances in preseason is their second round draft pick this year out of South Carolina named Cam Smith, or maybe it's short for Cameron Smith, and Noah Igbenogany, who was their former first rounder in 2020. And Noah Igbenogany, I would say of all the players on this list, probably needs a good preseason the most. From what I've been reading the last few weeks, is that the guy's been playing much better, and it seems like maybe the green light has come on, and maybe Vic Fangio has found something in him that previous head coaches have not found. When the Dolphins drafted Noah Igbenogany in 2020, Xavier Howard was having some off the field issues, and the Dolphins thought that there was a chance that he could be suspended. So they spent that first round pick on Noah, so that way they could prepare and be ready in case a suspension were to happen. It didn't happen, so Xavier Howard was able to play on the field with no suspension, and then Noah Benogany was you would think was able to sit back and develop and mature if and develop nicely. Has not come to fruition. Last year you didn't really see much of Noah outside of an interception that he had against Pittsburgh, which sealed the game for the Dolphins to win against them. But Noah Benogany, I think, really needs a good preseason, and I think he really needs green light really needs to come on for him because it's 2023. If I'm correct, the Dolphins did not exercise his fifth year option, so this for him is a contract year. So once his first round draft pick contract runs out, he's a free agent next year. So, and if he would like to stay in Miami, or at the very, I would think he needs to show, hey, I'm a lot better than where I was last year and the year before that and the year before that. And another guy, and I'm gonna go back to his the aforementioned Cameron Smith. Like I said, second round pick out of South Carolina. The Dolphins drafted him to help build depth because of all the injuries that they had at the cornerback position last year, with injuries to Byron Jones and Nick Needham and Nick. And there was one more guy. I can't remember his name. Byron Jones, Nick Needham, and a few others. So you know, Cam Smith is in a very intriguing battle for a roster spot at that cornerback position. So those are the six players. I think we six, right? Brandon Jones, no, we're not going to Cam Smith, Elijah Hickens, Higgins, excuse me, Eric Zumkama, and Channing Tindall. Yes. So those are the guys I'm keeping my eyes out for. Those are three guys: Jones, Igbenogany, Cam Smith, Channing Tindall, and Zumkama, and Elijah Higgins. Oh, and Dan Feeney too. I forgot. I talked about him in this video as well. So, those are the guys I'm looking out for the Dolphins in this preseason. After the game is over, I'm gonna do my reaction, my post game reaction to what I saw in their performance against the Falcons tonight. I might even do a halftime, a quick little halftime reaction and see where things are going right now. So that's my video. Those are the six things I'm going to be. Those are the six players I'm going to keep my eyes out for the Dolphins in this preseason, and can't wait to see what the team looks like this year.